Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Betsy Robb, who leads CX at BMF, a full-service CPA and advisory firm. Welcome, Betsy.
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
I'm delighted you're here, Betsy, but before we talk about customer experience, could you briefly describe your firm, your role, the types of projects you deliver, and maybe your typical clients?
Yeah, sure. BMF is a large regional firm based in Northeast Ohio with 2 offices. We have approximately 130 employees. We specialize in accounting, audit, tax, litigation support, transaction and valuation advisory services, and we would say that we probably focus on mid-size businesses. We offer services to private equity firms as well as SEC companies and some specialized services, but we focus on the middle market entirely. I would say what really sets us apart, especially over the past decade, has been our commitment to remaining an independent regional firm.
Got it. And what brought you to BMF, Betsy?
I was right out of college. I got a degree in graphic design, and in Northeast Ohio, I can't say that there's a huge drive for graphic designers, but I saw a position open for a marketing and administrative job that didn't require any experience. So I figured I'd get my foot in the door and start there. So that's really what got me started and has kept me there ever since.
That's great. And to get into it, what was happening in the business that made customer experience hard to ignore? And so when did it finally demand your attention?
It feels a little cliche to say, but I think CX really came to the forefront for BMF during the pandemic. Our employees were forced to work remotely, and naturally our clients had to adjust with us. We like to say at BMF, we don't represent numbers, we represent people. We represent the people behind the numbers, those employees and owners that are working really tirelessly for the success of their company. And it was especially challenging during the pandemic. While we had been sending surveys in the past, it was a new world, and we needed to make sure that we were hearing from our clients and giving them the chance to give us feedback in as many ways as possible. And I think that's really what started us on our CX journey.
Was there anything that the clients were saying or perhaps signaled that gave you that intuition that something really wasn't working and you need to take action?
I can't say that there was something that was said or done specifically, but in the accounting industry, at least, some common feedback from clients, not just for us, I think it's just industry-wide, is that accountants are pinned as being reactive. So think like compliance versus advisory services. But I truly believe BMF was proactive when it came to the CX journey. We recognized a need and made the pivot before something catastrophic happened or something specific happened. So we were proactive in this area specifically.
And where did that come from? Was it something, Betsy, that you brought to the team? Was it something that the leadership team had already seen as potentially a place to improve or a gap?
Sure. This is where CX really starts to feel like my own personal journey just as much as one for BMF. I started my career, like I said, shortly after college, and it was an entirely new position. So there was some foreshadowing there that I didn't see at the time. Every time I stepped into a role, it was an entirely new role. It went from marketing, business development to client experience. And that was at the start of 2022 was my official start as client experience manager. But I think it became clear for our leadership team that CX was what we call its own leg. We talk about marketing in a stool. It was its own leg of that stool within our department because we had such a solid foundation of team members dedicated and devoted to marketing, business development, and this just made sense to be that third leg of the stool. And I think because I've worked at BMF now for nearly 14 years, I've had that privilege of working with a great partner group. And my career path, while it's unique to BMF, probably isn't uncommon for folks like me in the accounting industry. But because of that, I've earned the trust and respect of our leadership team, and they're open to new ideas and respect my opinion. And because of that, I don't think CX was ever an argument I had to win. It was more of a shared initiative that's developed over time as I have developed into the role.
That's super interesting. That's great. And so when you think about that journey, what were the first concrete steps that you took? Yeah, maybe you could say where you started, the first concrete steps, and then maybe also why you started there versus maybe somewhere else.
It's going to sound like a plug for Clearly Rated, but I promise it's not. I promise it's not.
Okay.
But I do think our first concrete step was sending surveys through Clearly Rated, because we were able to send surveys to 100% of our clients, which was something we could have never have accomplished before. We were sending surveys in an archaic way, and the volume was too much to do it in the right way. So I think, honestly, Clearly Rated was our first, I'm going to call it, investment into client experience.
Got it. And is there a reason that you started there, particularly when you think about CX?
I think we started there because we wanted to be informed from our clients before we did anything else. We wanted to hear from them before we tried to make an initiative. It felt more intuitive that way. Maybe we would glean information from them to create the path. It didn't feel right to do it the other way, to force them into what we thought client experience was.
So when you started this initiative, Betsy, what was harder than you expected when actually putting CX into practice?
I would say I wasn't really expecting being on such an island when we started down the CX path within the accounting industry. Every other department or service line has a committee or a association that they can belong to, people that they can go to with problems or questions and have a shared interest with, and that they can share insights and benchmarking. And while it's gaining traction, client experience is still pretty new to the accounting industry. For example, as I'm sure you can imagine, accountants like numbers. But try finding a local comparable benchmark when so few firms are doing anything dedicated to client experience for their staff or their departments. So it felt very lonely when we started first. That was probably the hardest thing that I wasn't anticipating.
How did you, apart from learning yourself, were there other places that you could bring information back into the organization, or at least learn yourself? I think there's a book that you recommended to me when we spoke earlier, for example, about CX.
Yes, I definitely had to look outside of accounting. And I'm a huge reader, all gamuts of reading. But I believe the book that you're referring to is Unreasonable Hospitality. It's the GM of 11 Madison Park in New York. Very well-known restaurant, very fancy. And one of my favorite examples from that book is where they asked their clientele that was coming in where they parked their car, if they drove, where they parked, because they knew that dinner was going to take longer than 2 hours. So rather than expecting their customers to stress about leaving mid-dinner to go refill a meter, they would just go put a quarter in the meter for them, or a few. And what's $1 to a restaurant that's going to get a hundreds of dollars dinner tab? But it makes the client experience that much better. So it was things like that, all sorts of avenues like that for client experience. And I'm a customer and a client for many people. So I think in that sense, you can glean a lot of information outside of the industry. It's just a matter of finding it.
Yeah, that's a great story too. And so when you think about what you were bringing into the company, was there a specific client moment or project or even a metric where you knew the effort was paying off, Betsy?
Yes, I have a very distinct memory. It was in a prospect meeting. Now, I'm being in the business development side of things. I'm still very intimately involved in the sales cycle and meeting prospects. But there was one meeting, the first meeting I attended, where I was introduced as the client experience manager rather than the business development coordinator. And while the prospect recognized it instantly in the value that it added and the differentiator it gave us compared to our competitors, I'm a tangible proof that we are standing behind what we say when it comes to client experience. The real impact happened a week later when I got to share this feedback from the prospect to our leadership group. We have bi-weekly pipeline meetings, and it was a great chance to tell them what great feedback we were getting from the market in real time. So it was a notable change and a mind shift change for our teams to see how it's impacting the business, not just getting clients' feedback, but prospects as well.
That's great. One of the things about CX is that it isn't just about one function, Betsy. And you've spoken about this as well. And from your own personal journey within BMF, you've had a number of roles. And so you have the ability to see across end to end, really, not just like it's the function. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about how CX has shown up across the company and maybe some of the change management that you've had to address as you roll out the CX program.
Yeah, I think one of the best examples I can think of here is the onboarding process for new clients. I think it's easy to envision it as just one form and it's done, off it goes. And that's probably how the majority of our management team probably sees an intake form. That's what we call it, our intake form. When in reality, to me, it's the best example of how it bridges all of those things. It's gonna inform our attest team if they're doing audit and tax or audit work. Our tax teams need it. Our admin team needs it to set them up as clients. Our marketing team needs it to set them up on our mailing list. I need it from a contact information and surveys. It really branches all of them. And for me, it was the first time I could give an example to our teams of how it's all connected, how all of this information is for one client, but it impacts everybody. And it's something that we have to update annually. Just like when you go to the doctor's office, right? You have to confirm that your address hasn't changed and your email hasn't changed, or you don't have any new children. Same applies for your tax accountants. They need to know if they're doing anything else for your family or for your works. To me, that was one of those, it seemed like an easy answer, but the further we dig into our intake process, the more gaps and the more holes we're identifying, which is good. Those are opportunities to improve. But that's definitely something that's been in our radar for quite some time now and is still something that we're really trying to improve on because of the impact it has through the whole life of the client's journey, whether they know it or not. It impacts how we do our jobs, and not just mine, everybody's.
Was that a surprise to people that it was going to show up in so many parts of the business when you're looking to make these improvements?
I think a lot of people would like to have a magic wand and just click, it's done. I don't think any of us really anticipated how much work is involved from everybody. It's a team effort to onboard a new client. And 60 years ago, it might not have been that hard. Today, it's a lot of information that changes all of the time, and we need to keep track of it. So it has been an adjustment for many of us to make it a team effort.
And how have you been able to bring people on this journey, Betsy? Because it's not an easy journey. So have you managed to shepherd the various teams and functional stakeholders?
I affectionately like to call it herding cats. It's like forcing their hands. We this year are implementing our very first CRM, and it's a lot of work and a lot of data that we have to gather, but it's also giving us the chance to force people's hands to make a change in how they do things and how the systems work. So we're getting away from another accounting term, that Sally process, the same as last year. We don't do that. We don't buy into that anymore. So forcing them is the best answer. It's not the nicest answer, but you just have to. You can't stay the same. You can't get better if you don't change. And they know that.
Yep. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I'm moving a little bit on to proof points, Betsy. When you think about CX ultimately impacting the business, whether that's retention, growth, fees, win rates, internal alignment, maybe you could speak to a couple of examples or just one example of the impact to the business that CX has made.
Sure. I think this might be one of the hardest questions I have to answer, not just for you, internally as well. But for this past year, I think the answer would be internal alignment. We implemented something that we call client service plans for our top 25 clients, which is a very small portion of the business when you talk about just the number of clients. But we brought together the engagement teams for all of these clients. And while it sounds simple, getting them into a room it could be for the first time. And these clients have been around for 25 plus years. They've been with us for a long time. And things like complacency can be disguised as compliance. And that's human nature, right? It's not that our teams aren't doing a wonderful job serving our clients, but it was getting them back into the room, kind of starting over from a internal perspective. Again, the clients didn't have any input in this. It was all internal discussions, but it was getting the teams to talk together again in person, because we've also gotten away from that with our remote workforce. And something happens when you put everybody into a room that's different than putting them onto a video. And we discovered a lot of opportunities for our clients that we could be doing differently internally. And it could be something as simple as somebody knows their communication style is different or their preferences are different. And so maybe don't text them, they only want emails, or vice versa. And those client service plans are also informed by the client. We put our client feedback in there so we can hear from our clients, or for some cases, notably, we haven't gotten responses from them in our surveys, and the discussion that went around that and the light that comes from those. I think I also, during those meetings, pushed that book, Unreasonable Hospitality, on them. I would encourage all of you to read this and see if there's anything that you can apply to your own clients. So again, nothing earth-shattering, but that's not what CX needs to be. CX can be the smallest thing, but it has the greatest impact, right? Just like that quarter.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I always think feedback is a gift, and you receive it in the manner it's given. And when you do get responses, whether they're challenging or super positive, the mindset is always, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why they said that.
Yeah, it's about creating like an emotional impact, right? It's not just technically perfect service. It's when our commodity is our people, an emotional impact should always be the goal. So that's what those plans went to.
Yeah, how you feel about a brand is not just about how you look on your website. It's, to your point, across every interaction that you have with that firm is how you show up. Yeah, that emotional impact is always, I think, sometimes underestimated, but actually very important.
Very.
When you think about working with the partners, Betsy, maybe you could tell me a little bit about, I have a quote in mind that you gave me, but which I can tell you, but maybe it's something that one of the partners said to you in terms of supporting you in the role as an advocate for CX and an advocate for the clients within your company.
Yeah. So like I said, I've been truly blessed to work at a firm that has a very supportive leadership team. I'm sure there's something to be said about the time that I've spent there and my energy and effort put into the positions over time and the development of my own career. But I looked at that as they continually invested in me over the years, and in turn, they're investing into their own business because of that and their clients. The one thing that I can say, and you might want to ask me this later, I might be jumping the gun a little bit, but one of the most important parts of the CX journey for us, and one thing that I don't think anybody can skip, is getting the leadership buy-in. If you don't have it, everything's going to be harder. They're not going to be doing the day-to-day work, but they have to be your champions, not just your cheerleaders. If you're not in the room, they have to be just as supportive and just as big of advocates of the process internally and externally. And I've really been lucky to have that here at BMF.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I was going to ask you, when firms start their CX journey, what are one of the things you wouldn't skip? And that buy-in, I would suggest, is like one of the most important things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I know one of your partners said, in a world of promise makers, my job is to make sure we are promise keepers. Yes. And I think that was the quote that one of the partners shared with you about making sure that BMF is a promise keeper, which I thought was pretty powerful, actually.
Yes, that's one of my favorite ways to introduce myself on prospect calls. That's how I explain my job in one sentence. It's my elevator pitch.
That's the looking ahead. What is the goal that you and the team more broadly at BMF are aiming to achieve? And I was going to say 3 to 5 years, but maybe that's a bit much, but certainly over the next couple of years.
Next couple of years, that's going to be our CRM implementation for sure. It's going to impact so many aspects of our business, but I'm happy to go past a couple of years. In 3 years, I would love to see not just the full implementation of our CRM, but adoption by all levels of the staff. I really want to have some recovery playbooks in place for our staff as well, resources for them when they get feedback, good or otherwise, and what to do with it and how they can respond as needed for their clients. Because right now, most of that lands on me, which is fine, but I'd like them to have the resources too. And then using our CRM to track the metrics that we can really use for ROI, share of wallet, retention rate, et cetera. And then in 5 years, I'd like to see CX really driving our revenue and growth strategy. If I told the leadership team that would be the change today, it would be a big shift. But in reality, if I do my job right between now and then, it shouldn't even feel like a shift. It should happen naturally between now and then. So that's what I'd really like to see in 5 years.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Betsy. We talk about AI a lot, right? And I'm sure you do internally too. How is AI impacting your business and the way you do business?
Oh man, I think it impacts everybody's day to day. I certainly use it. I use it because I don't enjoy writing. I use it to help myself there. I use it for data analytics on my own side, but never anything that I publish, just to make things easier to digest. But as far as it impacting client experience, I think in reality, my goal is to make sure that AI doesn't replace client experience, that it should just be a tool to help it succeed and give us the information we need. Client experience, like we had mentioned, is that emotional impact, that emotional connection. And as much as AI is a powerful thing, human to human is really where it all comes down to it. So it's a great tool. It's a great resource to use. But in the end, client experience, in my opinion, is in a different bucket.
Yeah, the human to human is a really good way of phrasing that, Betsy, because I do think that AI can help us forge deeper human connections, and that's where the power is, but not replace them. Right. So, yeah, completely agree. Is there something about CX that makes your firm differentiated or different when you think about the way that you're showing up and embracing CX?
I'd like to say that it's me. But in all seriousness, I think it's the fact that my role even exists, that BMF dedicated a full-time employee to CX. Of course, I know that won't always be enough to set us apart. This role will become the new standard of service expected by clients. But hopefully by the time that gets here, we should be well ahead of the game if I've done my job right. Anyone can tout their NPS scores, and we're very proud of ours. But we're committed to making sure it's not just the numbers. It's what we do with the information after we get it, and how does it impact our marketing plan, our client journey mapping, our client service plans, et cetera. It's not just getting the numbers, but taking it beyond that and doing something with it and making sure our clients know that we hear them and we're responding.
Yeah, it's interesting. The perception is over 80% of CEOs will say that their firms differentiate on customer service, but the reality is that's not necessarily what clients believe. It's more like 8% of clients believe that. So actually embedding it in the way that you are, Betsy, is super powerful because you're able to demonstrate and prove it.
Yes, that's the goal.
I think I've covered most of the questions, Betsy. Is there something that I haven't touched on that you would like to share, whether that's a story or an impact?
I think one of the other harder parts of the role for me is that there are no very clear boundaries to client experience because it translates. It's like a circle. It's never ending. The client comes on board. we serve them, their needs change, we get their feedback, and we continue that cycle, hopefully over and over again, and finding ways to improve upon it each time. So because there's no clear start and end, and it involves the entire firm, it's easy to come unmoored or going down some rabbit holes too long and realizing you need to backpedal and take in the bigger picture again. So as one person and that human nature side of things, I have to be very conscious to make sure that I'm doing things that are in the best interest of the firm and our clients, and keeping that at the forefront of my mind as we go through these changes and find new ways to do things and improve. So that's probably one of my other challenges within the role, but it's a good challenge to have.
Yeah, when you are improving all the time, that then sets the bar where that is now where people and your clients expect you to be. Mm-hmm. And so you're meeting expectations, then you're exceeding, and then that then becomes the norm, and now you're meeting them again. And so you're always raising that bar. So that's always work to be done for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes, and I'm sure it's happened to others, we can't be the only ones. We keep raising that bar, and say you get an adverse response from somebody and you realize we've set that bar so high that sometimes if we can't meet it, they're very aware that we haven't met it and they're sharing that with us. But in reality, that's okay. We've set the bar high for us to aim for it, and they're holding us accountable to those things. So that's what it's for.
Yeah. So Betsy, I wanted to thank you for taking the time today to talk with me. The insights have been great, and I've really appreciated the time that we've spent together. So thank you very much, Betsy, for joining me today.
Thank you.